Warren Buffett once warned that dynastic wealth rarely survives the ambitions and follies of future generations. Nowhere is this more poetic than with the Rockefellers. Imagine you wake up tomorrow as one of the 200 living Rockefeller heirs. Life is comfortable, certainly, but you can't command industries or shape global policy. The brutal math of division across generations means that while the name remains, the power has evaporated. It is a fortune living in its twilight, still bright enough for a beautiful life, but no longer powerful enough to cast the world in its shadow. This is the strange reality of America's most famous dynasty, a quiet cautionary tale hidden in plain sight. To understand how a fortune that once represented 1.5% of the entire American economy faded into elegant obscurity, we have to go back to the very beginning, to the man who started it all, and the day his empire first cracked. That man was John D. Rockefeller Sr., and for a brief, staggering moment in history, he didn't just participate in the American economy, he was the American economy. At his peak, his personal fortune was nearly $900 million, which in today's terms is an almost incomprehensible $340 billion. It represented 1.5% of the entire US economic output. No one, not even today's tech titans, has ever come close to controlling such a share of America. His company, Standard Oil, was a leviathan, a monopoly so powerful and ruthless that it made him the most hated man in America. Perhaps as an act of public penance, or perhaps out of a genuine sense of religious duty, he began the largest philanthropic project in history, creating institutions like the Rockefeller Foundation. Contemporaries called it conscience money, but behind the scenes, another, more secret project was underway. Throughout the 1910s and 20s, he quietly transferred hundreds of millions of dollars directly to his only son, John D. Rockefeller Jr. It was a preemptive move, an attempt to get ahead of the inevitable. Then, in 1937, the inevitable arrived. John D. Sr. died at the age of 97. When his will was read, the world was shocked to learn his declared estate was a paltry $26.4 million. But then came the second shock. A new, punitive federal estate tax designed for fortunes exactly like his claimed a staggering 64% of that amount. Overnight, over $16 million vanished. For the Rockefeller family, this wasn't just a financial loss, it was a wealth massacre. It proved that the government could, with the stroke of a pen, decapitate a fortune built over a lifetime. The event became a defining trauma. It burned a lesson into the mind of every Rockefeller to come. The state is not your friend, and preserving wealth is a battle that is never, ever won. The 64% tax wasn't just a bill, it was a declaration of war from the government against private dynasties. It forged an obsession in his son, John D. Jr., who would dedicate the next phase of his life to designing a financial fortress so ingenious it would become the secret blueprint for every ultra-wealthy family that followed. And in the face of that war, John D. Jr. did not prepare for a battle. He engineered an escape. He had witnessed his father's fortune ravaged, and he understood a fundamental truth. You cannot win a direct fight against the US Treasury. The only solution was to move the family's wealth to a place where the rules of war, of taxes and estates simply did not apply. His solution, unveiled in 1934, was an act of quiet genius. It wasn't a wall against taxes, it was a financial Noah's Ark, designed to carry the family's legacy through the coming fiscal flood. Onto this ark, Jr. loaded the crown jewels of the Rockefeller Empire, the precious shares in the children of Standard Oil, Companies like Exxon, Mobil, and Chevron were placed alongside deeds to vast real estate holdings. The Ark was sealed, and the family became not owners, but lifetime beneficiaries. They could live off the immense income it generated, but they could never touch the principal. It was locked away, protected from individual debts, from costly divorces, and most critically, from the taxman upon their death. To ensure the Ark was truly unsinkable, he built a second one in 1952, entrusting its administration to the ever-loyal Chase Bank. It was a masterstroke of generational preservation. The proof of its success came when Jr. himself passed away in 1960. His personal estate of around $160 million was taxed at a mere 16%. Compare that to the catastrophic 64% that had hit his father's estate. The lesson was learned, the fortress was built, the financial Noah's Ark was sailing smoothly, carrying its priceless cargo into the future. But Jr., in his meticulous financial blueprint, overlooked a simple human truth. You can build an ark to protect a fortune from the storm outside, but you cannot protect it from the passengers within. He had saved the money, but he hadn't accounted for the hearts and minds of his own sons. The greatest threat to the Rockefeller dynasty was no longer outside the fortress, but inside it. And who were these passengers, the sons entrusted with a financial kingdom? They were known to the world simply as the brothers, 6 children of John D. Jr., including one daughter, Abby, who largely stayed out of the public eye. The 5 boys, however, would take the single immense fortune their father had so carefully preserved and begin to pull it apart. They didn't inherit just the money, they inherited the pressure. But they did not inherit a unified vision. Each brother was a world unto himself, a fragment of the whole. There was John D. III, the eldest, the dutiful philanthropist. He was the quiet one, channeling the family's immense resources into grand cultural projects that still define New York City today, like the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts and the Asia Society. He built monuments of culture. Then there was Lawrence, the quiet genius, the only brother who seemed to truly inherit the founder's Midas touch for making new money. He became a pioneer in venture capital, making an early bet of just $288,000 on a little company called Apple. That single investment would eventually be worth over $120 million. He saw the future. There was Winthrop, the family's black sheep, a handsome playboy who struggled to find his place. He eventually fled the pressures of New York for a sprawling cattle ranch in Arkansas, reinventing himself as the state's governor, a populous reformer worlds away from Wall Street. And finally, David, the youngest and last surviving of his generation, the global banker, the statesman without estate, who chaired the Chase Manhattan Bank and became the de facto patriarch of the family for half a century. But it was the 5th brother, Nelson, who embodied the raw, untamed ambition of the dynasty, a force of nature, a human wrecking ball of charisma and political will. As governor of New York, his ego was so vast it could be measured in concrete and steel. He poured a staggering $2 billion, a fortune even by Rockefeller standards, into a gargantuan government complex in Albany, a project so immense and cold it was nicknamed Rocky's Egyptian Tomb. Nelson wanted the presidency more than anything. He chased it 3 times and failed. He finally reached the White House as vice president under Gerald Ford. But his story doesn't end in glory. It ends in scandal. On the evening of January 26, 1979, the news broke. Nelson Rockefeller, age 70, was dead. The initial report was simple, dignified. A heart attack, suffered while working late at his desk in the Rockefeller Center. a fitting end for a man of his stature. But the story quickly began to unravel. The first thread came loose with a phone call. The emergency call hadn't come from his office. It had come from a townhouse a few blocks away, a townhouse he owned but didn't live in. Then the timeline started to shift. Why had it taken a full hour for someone to call an ambulance? The press started digging, and they found her, a 25-year-old assistant named Megan Marshak. It was she who was with Nelson when he died. It was she who had waited an hour to call for help. The casually constructed narrative of a powerful man dying at his desk shattered. In its place was a sordid, all-too-human story. An elderly, married vice president, a secret townhouse, and a young woman half his age. The damage was catastrophic. This wasn't just a private tragedy, it was a public humiliation that stained the most famous name in America. So you see the builder, the banker, the visionary, the rebel, and the politician consumed by scandal. It seems like a simple story of different paths, doesn't it? But it's not. They all shared one critical vulnerability, a blind spot passed down from their father that would prove more destructive than any market crash. And it wasn't about their ambition. By the time this generation passed, the single great fortune had shattered into more than 24 individual pieces for their children. The fourth generation, who, as one observer noted, had learned to spend money much faster than their parents could make it. So what was that fatal flaw, that shared vulnerability? It wasn't in their balance sheets, it was in their bedrooms. The dynasty's biggest strategic decision stopped being about business, and they would soon discover that hearts break fortunes faster than any tax collector ever could. This is the story of how the dynasty's most critical transactions moved from the boardroom to the bedroom. It's where the ink on marriage certificates and divorce decrees began to matter more than oil contracts. For the first two generations, marriage was a strategic acquisition. The patriarch, John D. Sr., a man of immense wealth but questionable public repute, married Laura Settee Spellman. She was the daughter of a prominent abolitionist and politician. This wasn't just a marriage, it was the acquisition of any impeachable moral authority. His son, John D. Jr., continued this strategy. He married Abby Aldrich, daughter of the powerful Senator Nelson Aldrich, the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. This was a merger, uniting raw industrial capital with old-world political power and social legitimacy. These were not matters of the heart, they were annexations of influence. The weddings were formal, the portraits stoic. They were sealing a deal. Then came the third generation, the brothers, and the deals began to unravel. The first and most spectacular crack appeared with Nelson Rockefeller. In 1962, the ambitious New York governor divorced his wife of 31 years to marry a woman named Margaretta Happy Murphy, who had just divorced her own husband to be with him. In the early 1960s, this was a national scandal. It cost him the 1964 Republican presidential nomination and signaled a seismic shift. A Rockefeller had prioritized personal desire over the dynasty's public ambition. The tabloids had a field day. This wasn't a merger, it was a messy public demerger. His brother, Winthrop, made the financial cost of this new era brutally clear. His divorce from his wife, Barbara Bobo Sears, resulted in a then record-breaking settlement of $5.5 million. It was a clear demonstration that love, or the lack of it, now came with a price tag that could drain millions directly from the family trusts. While some, like their brother Jay, still managed a classic political merger by marrying Sharon Percy, the daughter of a senator, the trend was undeniable. The family had begun to choose partners based on love, and in doing so, they exposed the fortune to the unpredictable volatility of the human heart. For the generations that followed, modern divorce laws, with their principle of equitable distribution, turned this emotional volatility into a mathematical certainty of wealth destruction. Every divorce became a fractional liquidation of the dynasty itself. This was the moment the Rockefellers traded calculated breeding for human complexity. They were finally becoming a normal family, and they were about to discover that hearts break fortunes faster than any tax collector ever could. But as costly as these divorces were, the financial wounds were, in a way, manageable. They were predictable losses that could be planned for. The truly fatal blow to the Rockefeller legacy would come from the next generation. A generation so drowning in guilt over their great-grandfather's oil money, they decided to use what was left of it to destroy the very industry that created them. And this strange, paradoxical crusade has its generals. Leading this quiet war of conscience is the family's soft-spoken patriarch, David Rockefeller Jr. At 83, his life's mission isn't building new empires of capital. His great act of atonement for the sins of oil is his serene farm in the Hudson Valley, dedicated to regenerative agriculture. He wants to heal the earth, a noble goal, worlds away from his great-grandfather's mission, which was to drill it, refine it, and sell it. The true architects of this philosophical demolition, however, are his cousins. Valerie Rockefeller and Miranda Kaiser are the chairs of the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, the family's key philanthropic engine. In 2014, they made a stunning announcement. The fund would divest entirely from fossil fuels. It is the ultimate poetic irony. The very money that gushed from the oil fields of Pennsylvania and Ohio is now being used as a weapon to starve modern oil companies of capital. It's a family fortune funding its own philosophical destruction. Then there's Justin Rockefeller. He saw this wave of environmental guilt among the ultra-wealthy and found a way to monetize it. He co-founded The Impact, an organization that helps billionaires align their investments with their social values, a practice now known as impact investing. In a way, he's carrying on the family tradition, finding a new market and capitalizing on it. The market, this time, is billionaire guilt. Of course, not everyone is marching in lockstep. Ariana Rockefeller, a competitive show jumper and handbag designer, brings a dose of refreshing honesty. She is one of the few to publicly oppose the divestment, arguing the family should work with energy companies, not against them. For her loyalty to the family's foundations, she has been called the black sheep of her generation. And perhaps the most telling symbol of this twilight age is Mark Fittler Rockefeller. He fled the East Coast elite for a ranch in Idaho. His great-grandfather once controlled 1.5% of America's entire economy. Today, Mark Rockefeller collects federal farm subsidies. The dynasty that once bent the US government to its will now takes a handout from it. The family is now locked in this bizarre internal conflict, a war between its past and its present. But what happens when the trusts that fuel this very debate finally run dry, when that river of gold trickles down to a stream and then to nothing? The future of the Rockefeller name, it seems, isn't power or philanthropy. It's a brand, ready to be licensed for a CBD oil or perhaps a reality TV show. And this isn't some distant, abstract future. The math is already running. Let's project forward. First, by the year 2035, demographers predict there will be over 400 Rockefeller descendants. The great 1934 trust, that financial Noah's Ark built by Jr., will likely face its final dissolution. The vast fortune, when divided among so many, will leave most individual heirs with inheritances under $25 million. A comfortable life, certainly, but not the kind of wealth that moves markets or influences policy. It's the final dilution of power into simple, comfortable irrelevance. Then project just a few years further to 2040. It's entirely possible that the family's foundations, fueled by the guilt of the younger generations, will have spent more money funding lawsuits and initiatives against the fossil fuel industry than the family's entire remaining net worth. The philosophical self-destruction will be complete. This is where the true commodification begins. Imagine the posters for a new reality show, The Real Heirs of Kaikwit, a spectacle of inherited anxiety and quiet luxury branding, filmed on the ancestral estate they can no longer afford to maintain alone. Picture the sleek, minimalist packaging for Rocky's Remedies, a line of CBD oil launched by a sixth-generation heir looking to capitalize on the family name. There will be competing memoirs, each claiming to tell the real story, and the name itself will be licensed for luxury goods, a historical echo attached to a price tag. The final state of the Rockefeller Dynasty is this: a case study. The name will be etched on a Harvard Business School textbook titled From Empire to Influencer: How Great Fortunes Die. It's the perfect illustration of how dynasties end, not through revolution, but through reproduction, good intentions, and the uniquely American genius for destroying wealth through therapy bills. The real power, the kind that once belonged to John D. Sr., will have long since migrated to the server farms of Silicon Valley and the sovereign wealth funds of the East. The final image is Rockefeller Center, its iconic facade no longer bearing the family name, but the glowing logo of a new global power. So the empire that lit America ends with its heirs trying to extinguish the flame. From a global power to a Harvard case study. It's a perfect tragic arc, but it leaves us with one essential question. And that question, of course, is for you. After tracing this incredible arc from absolute power to quiet diffusion, what is your personal takeaway? Specifically, I would love to know, of all the modern Rockefellers we've met today, from the activists trying to reshape the family legacy, to the quiet inheritors living outside the spotlight, whose path do you find most compelling, and why? I'm genuinely curious to read your thoughts in the comments below. I truly believe our shared discussions are where these histories gain their deepest meaning. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more episodes of Old Money Luxury. It means the world and helps our community grow. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until our next story.